to Film Obsessive. I'm Jay Rohr, and I'm here with Fia Perera. She's an actress, stand-up comedian, producer, writer, director. Did I leave anything out?
I'm actually just to edit. I am not an actor anymore or a comedian.
Okay.
I am a writer, director, and producer. But I do make people laugh who are sitting in Video Village with some of my bad jokes.
Well, excellent. But so you've had a pretty impressive career, though. You've done it all to a certain extent.
Well, thank
And
you. I appreciate that. I need to tell my mother that 'cause she's like, "Where are the awards and millions of dollars?" And I was like, "Mom, yes, we've gotten awards. Just relax, okay?" I think she'd be more happy if I actually got married. But anyway, no, I've had a really that's a whole nother thing. But thank you for that. I think it's my journey has started, as an actor back in New York years ago. I went to Tisch School of the Arts, Circle in the Square, and then I started auditioning for soap operas. I did lots of, different movies and things, and then I started found my love for stage, and I did close to 21 woman shows off Broadway with all the different characters. So I am a lover and a collector of fabulous characters, and which Paul and Trisha really are. So yes, I mean and then having stand up and all that, I've been very fortunate, and I kind of segued being able to transition those skills into directing, to working with actors, to be able to work with people like Paul and Trisha, to be able to make people comfortable, to be able to get wonderful stories from people and collaborate has been a big, it's why I do what I do. But all that acting and everything kind of, it's just a wonderful, it's a great skill to have.
it sounds like an interesting career evolution, how everything's sort of grown and led one thing into the other. And that's brought us to this point where you have this documentary, Paul and Trisha, The Art of Fluidity. Would you kindly tell us what the documentary is about?
Yes, so the documentary is about a very colorful, charismatic, wonderful, gender fluid British artist, Paul Whitehead, and his alter ego, Trisha Van Cleef. And it delves in and explores the duality of their gender, and as well as and their fluidity of gender and their artwork. And really we see a person, especially what's really interesting about this movie too, is that we see a lot of younger trans non-binary gender fluid influencers and different people, but rarely do we see enough stories about older trans and gender fluid men and women. So to me, this meant a lot to me to be able to shine a spotlight, because there's so many beautiful individuals that really relate, and this is their story in many ways. They understand. And so it's really about two artists in one body and the duality of two beautiful souls. And it explores spirituality with Yogananda, who is Paul's guru, and I have Yogananda right here, and Paul and Trisha's guru. And it really is about the messaging of the film is your job is not to make other people feel comfortable. Your job is to make you feel comfortable.
I love that message about it. That was something that Paul and Trisha both repeat throughout the
Yes.
documentary, and I found that very, very satisfying message to hear from somebody. I think that we can all benefit from having that mentality. How did you come to know about Paul and Trisha? Did you know them beforehand, or what led you to find them and make them the subject of this documentary?
Well, fortunately, my one of my best friends, Adam Fisk, um, he he's Paul and Trisha are like their best friend. And and so I had the pleasure of knowing them before we decided to make this beautiful documentary. And Adam had approached me because he was, during COVID, was Paul and Trisha's art agent, and was they were planning on doing all these pop-up shows in Europe. And so his son and son's best friend are really talented animators. And so those three animated short films that you see in the documentary They had done those shorts, and along with some other stuff, a loop that was going to go in these pop-up shows all when they go to Italy and France and stuff. So Adam said, well, we've got all this great content, Fia. Would you want to make a short film with the animated shorts? And after I was like, do you know who Paul and Trisha really are? This is not a short film. So once we delved in, I realized, that I really wanted to focus on the fluidity of their gender and artwork and all that beautiful, understanding. And also the father, Paul and Trisha found the acceptance and the father that, in Yogananda that they could never find in their own father. So there's all that going on too. So that's how I met them, and we're very good friends. Yeah.
Did that make it easier to sort of get into recording their life story? Because you already had like sort of a personal association with them, sort of like, was it easier to ask them questions about themselves?
Well, yes and no. It's funny because I do see two different people, and it's not like Sybil. It's just two different, Trish is Trish and Paul is Paul. So Trish can be a little, Trish is great, but she can be a little Betty Davis and sassy. So there were times it was like 4 a.m. It was like, Trish, please say this. This is what I need. Please, please. And it's like, I will say, what I do not put words in my mouth. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. So sometimes that was really hard. But you know what I try to do, my as a filmmaker, is not to editorialize and allow people to be who they are, as even with my narrative projects, letting the actors shine and fill that role with all the things that they are. And that's what I stepped back and allowed them to do. But I did have very specific questions. So, but Paul and Trisha are very open. They've been in the spotlight quite a bit. So they are very, they're very comfortable with being interviewed. So they just have that, wonderful sound bites. Like one of my favorite sound bites is when Trisha says, I'm bisexual and I spell it B-U-I because I always pay for it in the end. I mean, stuff like that, you can't even make it up.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. So it
Yeah,
was fun.
yeah. Um, so given the tightness of the runtime and the way it's almost like in an individual's autobiography,
Mhm.
oral autobiography, is this do you see this as like a standalone film, or could this be the possible like launching point of like a series of like spiritually related films, like getting the stories of other people and their transgender experience?
Wow. I mean, Jay, do you want to produce that?
If I had the money.
Well, that's very interesting and fascinating. I haven't thought about that. I mean, this is a standalone piece, but of course, anything, we are in a fluid world, and we are, as projects go. And you can think you've written one thing as a film and then it turns into a series. So we just don't know, and vice versa. But for right now, it's a beautiful piece of art in the film. And if it has legs and it takes off, great. But at the moment, I am actually just excited for it to go out and have this wonderful life. And what's really cool is that we are talking to different monks at at Yogananda, at the Church of Realization, over a self-realization over there. And that's really, it's, I always, and I, that's why I look at them all the time, the Self-Realization Center Fellowship. So Yogananda is always always with me. But, so many of those followers are starting to watch the film. So it could definitely turn into something else.
Hmm. How long did this take to put together?
Took about 2 years. I mean, literally, like that was the editing and post and stuff like that. But it took me probably about I shot it all in like a month.
Mhm.
But then we were doing pickups and more interviews and stuff like that. So I think it was initially with Paul and Trish, it was a month, and then we had with pickups. So it took us, from start to completion 2 years actually I would say year and a half. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
You already mentioned the animations, which I was going to ask about because they're
Hmm.
fantastic. I really like some of the visual elements you put in this documentary in order to break up, so it's not just a person talking through the whole
Mhm.
thing. I mean, as fascinating as the story is, it can
Mhm.
get a little hard to watch one person talking. Um, but there's a reenactment at one point. I was wondering, were you planning on having like more of those reenactments in there, or was that something that just sort of like this one moment we're gonna do it?
Um, I think I mean, I was worried. So as far as the, just to say, to answer, just to get back to the reenactment question, but as the filmmaker, I was worried about just having is this going to be a talking head? But because it has so much of the artwork and it moves, I think the feedback I've gotten is that it's really fun because you never know what's going to happen next, as opposed to just one person always talking. There's just a lot of pieces to it, and it moves. And and the animation and the reenactment is great too. No, I didn't want to have any more reenactments. I feel like that's the kind of what we needed to land on to show the severity of what that Paul and Trisha went through, and what people that are trans and non-binary are facing. But that, a film tells me, the project will tell you what it's supposed to be. And if you're supposed to have more reenactments, if you're supposed to have this, I'm a very intuitive creator. And so if it appears, it tells me. But I'm not going to just put in stuff just to, oh, this has to be interesting. There's got to be a reason why there's that character. What are they saying? I'm very specific, which drives some of my writing partners crazy. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that having it just as the one segment on its own, because like you said, it's a very say harrowing moment. I think it intensifies and the importance of what's going on there. It doesn't like just become one reenactment among several. So it makes that moment, it gives it a little bit more emphasis.
Yes.
Um, so Paul didn't strike me as the typical media representation that we tend to see of a transgender individual, because he goes back and forth between his identities. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes he's Trisha, and sometimes and she is sort of the personality, and then sometimes it's Paul.
Right.
Um, did you feel like this was a chance to broaden the understanding of gender fluidity by featuring someone who isn't absolutely one thing? Because when
Mhm.
we see a lot of people represented on like talk shows or whatever, it's always somebody who has found their identity and is shifting entirely towards that. You know, we don't usually see people that are, sometimes I'm Paul and sometimes I'm Trisha.
Mhm. Well, Jay, that's a great question. And I got to tell you that there are a lot of Pauls and Trishas out there,
Mm.
because some of them are my friends, and I've met their husbands and wives, and I feel like this whole issue, this whole conversation about trans and gender and all this stuff, what is this and that, it's really an individual identification. And I know that, like, under the trans umbrella, you'll have gender fluid, you'll have what was cross-dressing is gender fluid. But you know what? I think it's a very real experience for both of them. And for somebody that is close to Paul and Trisha, they really are, they really are that feminine and masculine in one body, which I love, because I feel like we all are, and humans are, if we allow ourselves just to tap into both those sides. You don't have to be queer, you don't have to be non-binary, you don't have to be this or that. You can be whatever you want. The point is, instead of saying, oh, it's bad to have that as a cis man, to have that feminine, or to have that je ne sais quoi, whatever, embrace it and go, wow, that's amazing. I'm kind of seeing things through a different lens. Why can't we be more expansive? So that's what I love about this gender fluidity, is that it's allowing two possibilities. It's almost being non-binary in a way. I mean, I believe that that's kind of such a close thing to gender fluidity.
Mm.
So I really did want to explore that, because I feel like they have a right to exist as who they are, as anybody who is completely transitioned, or somebody who's just one thing or whatever. It's whatever people want to be.
Oh,
So
absolutely,
I,
absolutely, and I agree. And I think that the documentary does a really good job of showing not only what you're talking about, but also I thought it did a really good job of presenting Paul's like personal journey of exploring identity and finding Trisha. And then through Trisha, we get to see how she grows and becomes a person who can represent herself.
Yep.
And one of the things about that was that like Paul and Trisha lived in a time before the internet. And
Yep.
cyberspace has given contemporary transgender folks access to communities and information that wasn't really widely available to folks like Paul and Trisha back in the day. Does that make this documentary a piece of oral history reminding younger LGBTQ individuals things may not be great, but they are getting better?
Yes, absolutely, Jay. You know, when Adam and I talked about why I wanted to make this movie, why he wanted to produce it, is because it's a film for everybody, whether you are in the LGBTQ plus community or you're an artist or you're somebody who's struggling in your life to really be who you are and to plant your flag. And, you know, so many, and now more than ever, we have so many young people that are really challenged. And they're, you know, we're dealing with a lot of mental health issues, especially in the LGBTQ plus community. And unless the kids and the different, you know, youth and even adults get the support and find their tribe, unless they find that support, a lot of them are really at risk.
Mhm.
For a lot of, you know, a lot of their own, you know, just not of mental health issues and being alone and sometimes suicide. So I feel like this film is a messaging that you belong. You belong. We love you. And Paul and Trisha can do it. And it wasn't easy for them. It's not, it, you know, it's still not easy. I mean, they talk about in the film about going to certain states and having to not present in a certain way because they just don't feel comfortable. So I feel like, but the end of the day is they do end up doing it. Like they even though they might not feel comfortable, Trish has showed up in Indiana
Mm. There you go.
and people
Um,
love Trish. So there you go.
um, most of the documentary is Paul and Trisha relating their personal experiences. Um, why were like other voices from their lives present in this? Was that just to maintain the focus on them and their like personal relative experience, or was there a concern that having other people like might like muddy the perspective too much, or were folks just disinclined to take part?
It was a choice. It was a creative choice on my part just to keep it from their perspective, which is
Mhm.
very different. Most documentaries have all these different people weighing in. There is another documentary that another filmmaker is working on with all these different people talking about Paul and Trisha, and I wanted mine to be very different and to be very unique around the fluidity. And so for me, I'm mostly a narrative filmmaker. That's really my thing. So I feel like this is to me almost like a narrative because they are acting, they are the lead, they're the heroes in their own journey that we're seeing on screen. So for me, it was really creative to make that choice and to take the other people, it's their perspective on their lives. I mean, we do have Tracy. We had that Tracy was in there. And we've
Mhm.
got Mary, the lady, the dog lady, the comedy stuff. But you know, I thought Tracy was a really nice addition because Tracy is somebody that shines another perspective and is also like Paul and Trisha, Spencer and Tracy, as they talk about, and was you know, was in the Navy, was a high-ranking officer in the Navy. So you know, was on a submarine and is somebody that is, you know, and has talked quite a bit about she said you'd be surprised at how many people in the military that are high-ranking officials
Mm.
that are gender fluid or, you know, afraid to come out. So it was really
Mm.
interesting to have that perspective, but I wanted to keep it on Paul and Trisha's, their voice.
Okay. So the film is just starting to get out there.
Yes.
Would you say the reactions are what you'd hope for? I mean, besides the fact you've won I'm just checking my notes here, the Remy Award at the World Fest Houston International Film Festival. Like, are audiences like appreciating this film the way that you hope that they would?
Yes, they are. They really are. I mean, it touches me when people, say that they just loved it or they were very moved by it. And they really do understand they get more of a kind of an understanding of what people who are not like them are. And I think it's normalizing it. But, and then people just got to get a kick out of Paul and Trisha. And they love the artwork. I mean, they absolutely love the artwork. I mean, that's the cool thing is there are over 250 pieces of art in that film.
Oh yeah.
I've got some over there in my house right now. I can't afford to keep buying them. Maybe Scott. Scott's a big shot PR person, so he'll have to buy some stuff. But it's been, we've been really getting a nice response to it. I mean, we got just a wonderful review. Scott can speak more to that, but we've gotten some great reviews. Film Threat gave us a great review, Splash Magazine, and it's it's just great. So yes, to answer your question, yes. And you know what? If people don't get it, or if there's comments about, I think that, people having an issue with their spirituality or whatever, you can't please everybody.
Hmm.
But the proof is in the pudding, and people are loving the film.
Well, that's good to hear. It's
Thank
good to
you.
hear. Where are people going to be able to see this when it starts really getting around?
Well, July 9th, it will be officially on Apple.
Okay.
So everybody has Apple. Scott, it's also coming out on Amazon, and then all the SVOD, mini SVOD and AVOD stuff, platforms. So
Okay.
we'll have links to all that. But people can really they can enjoy it on Apple now, and then and as well as Amazon too.
Oh, that's good. That's good because it's always frustrating when you find something that's a good piece of film, but then it's like you got to dig through like four different streaming services in order to find it. It's like it's buried on the internet somewhere where no one can ever get to see it. So it's good to know this is going to be around and people will have access to it. Uh,
Absolutely.
um, Speaking of which, you made an award-winning short called Mermaid. I can see you got the
Yes.
poster behind you there. And that's available on Amazon right now. It's part of the Edge of Her Mind anthology. As I understand it, you're kind of hoping to turn that into a longer film, if possible. May I ask how that's going?
Yes, I'm actually in pre-production right now. We're going to be shooting it in September.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Yes. So we are moving into casting, and so we're moving. We're shooting it on the East Coast. So it's very exciting. So I'll keep you posted.
No,
But yeah, it's really a wonderful story about about a 12-year-old, a little 12-year-old boy that wants to be a mermaid. And he's living with his dad, and his mom has died of cancer. She was an amazing swimmer, kind of a mermaid in her own right. And so Cassie, meets this wonderful, fabulous gay black man, and he has this incredible house, and sneaks into this drag bar, and they have this incredible journey. Father finds out, not too happy about it, because Cass has been living this double life.
Mhm.
And then it's really that also the dad's journey of really accepting his child and seeing and accepting and loving them for who they are, which is a lot of the message of Paul and Trisha. So that's going to be really cool, casting an actor who is trans or non-binary, which we're specifically looking for. So I'm excited because there's some major talent out there. And then of course Pepper is, we're looking at incredible, just amazing actors. So TBD.
Well, I
So
look forward to it. So please keep
thank
us
you.
uh, keep us in mind when that becomes available because I would love to see that. Um, so. Uh, I guess that's I was going to ask about other future projects, but I don't know if there's anything else that you have. Like, how many irons do you have in the fire currently?
Well, my biggest iron is Mermaid right now is to get that to get this shot and have an amazing time. I cannot wait. I just like being behind the camera. is there are several things that bring me the most joy. And I wish I could say it was my ex-boyfriend, although Adam and I are dear friends. Um, but being behind the camera brings me probably it just makes me so joyous. And I think it's the magic of seeing life unfold with such brilliant actors and allowing people to really exist and be who they are in the space. And to me, those are my favorite films. When you see films where you're just seeing truly authentic characters, whether it's Anthony Hopkins or, just Charlize Theron or Meryl Streep or just any of these incredible actors that can just, Phil Hoffman. I was friends with Phil. And when an actor is that present, and just even just some of these other actors, just brilliant actors that we might not know, but they're just, they're not famous, but they're just amazing. And then, being able to see somebody like Paul and Trisha who can just really be themselves. To me, that's why I make movies, is to tell stories that can make people touch, move, and inspire people and make a change, make this planet better for people that are struggling, and also for animals too. I've got several things that movies around that too.
All right. All right. Well, I do think that this movie has a very touching portrayal of like just a very human and sweet person, and it was very moving in that respect. Just Paul and Trisha just both strike me as people that would just be fun to know, and I think that's one of the things that I would draw any audience into watching this documentary. Is just the fact that it's just these are just great people, you know. So the fact that there's this other element to them that might help other people feel comfortable with themselves is great, but it all works because you have such wonderful people at the core of it. So, not to
Thank
prattle
you.
on too much,
Thank
but
you.
so that kind of wraps it up for what I got.
Okay.
I'd like to thank you for your time. We'll make sure to put the link to your website in the description so people can keep track of what you're doing, and
Sure.
maybe I don't know where to go with that. I had something and then my brain just turned off. So I just want to thank you again for your time and
Thank you.
appreciate you talking to us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for interviewing me and watching the film and supporting. It means a lot to all of us.
Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jay. Have a really great rest of your day.
You too.